If you're a fan of Pokemon ROM hacks, I bet you've at least once or twice clicked on one of these videos, labeled the top 5 or 10 best of all time. And while these videos aren't necessarily wrong or bad, they often feel very samey, showcasing hacks that are incredibly popular, that you've probably already played before, or ones that the past 3 videos you watched also talked about. So I did some digging and I found 4 Pokemon ROM hacks that most of you probably haven't played before, that are all unique in their own interesting ways, and 3 of them are even completed. I'll of course be going through each one, detailing their features, so that you can have a better idea of which hack is the best for you. So without further ado, my name is Avery, and let's get right into the hacks. Let's start off strong with a ROM hack based on RuneScape. Now, before we continue, I've never played the game myself, but I don't think that had much of an impact on my ability to enjoy the Pokemon ROM hack. But in Pokescape, you'll travel through the region of Gielnor. That's nicely put together using an enhanced Generation 3 art style. Now, the big thing I need to mention about this game is that instead of catching Pokemon with Pokeballs, you'll be collecting monsters with pouches. And the monsters? There are over 1,000 of them. Now, you might immediately be thinking, how is that even possible? Well, I'll admit that most of them are pretty simple, resembling real-life animals and simple monsters. However, there are a plethora of different variants and evolutions of each of them, and the quality and variety of the Pokemon you'll find definitely increases as you progress through the game. But as for the actual Pokemon battles, I didn't find them to be very difficult, even while playing on set mode without using healing items. So I think the combination of the large Pokemon variety and casual difficulty would make this a pretty fun hack to Nuzlocke. But there's so much more to the hack than what I've already mentioned. First, the region takes place in a medieval setting, which, like I said before, uses an enhanced Generation 3 art style. However, outside of the unique setting, I didn't find the story to be too interesting. It does kind of copy the base formula, where instead of fighting gym leaders, you'll be fighting the dukes of each town. But I was personally more focused on catching tons of new Pokemon and exploring the world. And if it couldn't get any better, you'll even have access to both the EXP All from the very start of the game, and a free mover learner in every bank, which is basically this game's version of the Pokemon Center. Finally, Pokescape even has 2 separate ways to play the game. When you start, you can choose to either play Story Mode or Open World Mode, which makes your progression much more non-linear and adds level scaling. Overall, Pokescape was a really fun ROM hack, and I highly suggest you give it a try if you're looking for something much different, even though it's the only hack on this list that isn't finished. While you're here, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. I cover all kinds of ROM hacks and fan games whenever they're released or updated, so hit that subscribe button to make sure you never miss any. But one of the most common ROM hacking trends is remaking the Johto region, and one of the hacks that does so is a remake of Liquid Crystal, called Crystal Advance Redux. It of course has both the Johto and Kanto regions, with all their towns and gym leaders included, as well as Pokemon from the first 4 generations, with a handful of regional variants and new evolutions. But where this hack really shines is the quality of life. First of all, every Pokemon is fun to use, thanks to tons of learn set improvements, inspired by hacks like Renegade Platinum. But with buffs to your own Pokemon, also comes many to gym leaders and other boss fights. However, I will say that it's not an insane difficulty increase, so unless you plan to Nuzlocke the game, you probably won't have much trouble with it, especially when you have access to the EXP All very early, that allows you to build a team of 6 without a problem. And finally, the Season system, giving the Johto region a different look, adding even more replayability value. But even with all those changes, playing through an official region again can feel a bit boring. So let me introduce you to Pokemon Elysium, a ROM hack that takes place in a brand new region. In this game, you'll play as a girl living on the peaceful island of Krista. Like most Pokemon games, you're handed a starter and a Pokedex, with the goal of collecting 8 gym badges. But early on, your adventure takes a turn, as the starter you were handed is replaced with a Sylveon. Now I'll admit, there is an attempt to tell an interesting story here, but it does kind of fall flat due to the actual quality of the writing. However, I will say that there is an obvious amount of effort and passion put into the story, which does make the experience a bit better. But the region itself doesn't feel very special. The routes aren't bad, but they don't really have much of anything unique or interesting to offer, and that's mostly thanks to the use of the default fire red tile set, with a few houses and trees being recolored. It's not a bad style, but considering it was originally used for a region that doesn't offer much biome diversity, it kind of holds the game back from looking more appealing. However, I will at least compliment the inclusion of some optional areas, and the lack of feeling like I was walking in a straight line while progressing through the region. But in Elysium, you will be able to catch Pokemon from generations 1 through 7, but mostly just generations 1 through 3, with later gen evolutions and a handful of extras. The actual obtainability of them, though, isn't great, but I was able to build a full team of 6 just after the second gym. However, it isn't helped that most Pokemon are stuck with their Generation 3 learn sets, which means most of them significantly lack coverage options, and don't really learn anything useful until the latter half of your adventure. But that was at least helped by the lack of difficulty, as I never really struggled with any of the fights, despite not really having access to useful moves. Overall, Elysium, despite its flaws, is a hack that I still believe most of you can enjoy, especially considering that it is a completed game set in a new region. Last but not least, we have another ROM hack that's set in a brand new region with a new story. In Pokemon Dreams, you'll travel through Solda with the goal of collecting 8 gym badges. The story is pretty good. It's not deep or thought-provoking, but it's still a fun read. And even if you don't want to pay attention to it, the progression is simple enough that you won't find yourself getting lost. The visuals and route designs are also pretty simple. They aren't bad, but once again, the lack of custom or edited graphics just leaves something to be desired. Where this hack really shines though is the quality of life and Pokemon availability. Every Pokemon from generations 1 through 7 are available, with even a handful of Fakemon. But if you're not a fan of Fakemon, then don't worry, because I personally found that the overall lack of them, compared to the canon Pokemon, made them very easy to ignore. That's also thanks to the extremely large early game variety, as I was easily able to build a balanced team of 6 before I even made it to the second gym. The EXP and DexNav also help out when it comes to team building. The only thing I didn't really enjoy about the game was how easy I found it to be, especially considering that most of the random NPC trainers were pretty underleveled compared to my team. But if you're just looking for a more laid-back experience, with a ton of Pokemon to catch, I'd say this is the perfect hack for you. But I do want to apologize if you happen to have already played all these hacks. It's admittedly a lot harder to find unpopular ROM hacks of good quality than it is fan games. I still hope most of you are leaving this video with at least one new hack to play, and if you are, then make sure you subscribe to keep up with the latest Pokemon ROM hacks. And if you aren't, then why not check out the other videos on my channel, as I've covered plenty of other ROM hacks that you might not have played before. But anyways, I hope you have a nice rest of your day, and goodbye!